History.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock. So let's begin. My name is Shelley Haynes. I'm with the St. Joseph Museums. Tonight we are having Psychology Social Hour with Demetrius Chance. I will introduce him briefly here in just a moment. I would like to read this disclaimer first. This free virtual series features an educational program on a topic of mental health. This event is for generalized information, as in no way a form of diagnosis. Please consult with your doctor or therapist for specific medical or psychological advice. We are merely starting the discussion to help destigmatize mental health. Mental illnesses, symptoms, diagnosis, and treatment methods are all a highly individualized process. I would ask you to keep your audio muted throughout, and if you have a question, put it in the chat, and we'll have some chance for question and answer at the end. So with no further ado, I will introduce Demetrius Chance. He is a Fayetteville, North Carolina native, a certified peer specialist specializing in mental health, substance abuse, and decision making. He is a social justice advocate, mentor, and life skills coach, currently pursuing a Bachelor of Social Work at Missouri Western State University. Demetrius is the founder of Can You See Me Now Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit founded on the campus of Fort Hays State University in Hays, Kansas, aimed at providing a collective response of critical needs of local, state, and international issues, and seeks to bridge the gap between marginalized and non-marginalized members of society through education, advocacy, and community engagement opportunities. With that, we welcome you, Mr. Chance. I can't hear you, Demetrius. I think your microphone's there. We go.
All right. Okay. And can you see that? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. Again, my name is Demetrius Chance, and for this psychology hour, I wanted to go into protecting sanity, enhancing the natural perspective to authenticity. This is just a little background about me. I am a husband. I am a father of 4. I have been featured in News Press Now. I've been featured in Kansas KRP's radio station, Kansas City Beacon, just a few of the accomplishments. I've also been the president of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Health for Hays State University. I'm a part of the National Society of Leadership, so I have a little decorated past. But I want to jump in. I have a lot of information to kind of go over, but this is also interaction. So I would love for, if you have any questions or anything, please put it in the chat. But let's get started. What is sanity? And I want us to really think about what is sanity and how do we protect it? So even in the chat, if you could put in what you think sanity is, and if you were to rate your sanity, exactly what would you rate it at this particular moment? And I will be viewing to see if there's any responses that come through. Protecting sanity, enhancing the natural perspective to authenticity. There's a couple of definitions I want to highlight as we go through this. Sanity, the ability to think and behave in a normal or rational manner. Sound mental health. When we're talking about sanity, I want us to also take in consideration soundness of mind. rational and reasonable behavior. When we're talking about authenticity, the quality of being authentic, we know that authentic means undisputed, origin, or genuine. Through this entire training or coaching, I want everyone to actually take a more self-assessment of these things. Let's go to enhancing. To intensify, increase, or further improve the quality, value, or extent. Also, with enhancing, I want us to really take heed to execution, the carrying out or putting into effect plan, order, or cause of action. Through any of the information that is being shared, if there's no execution, if there's no change, this likelihood of success becomes very limited. And through this entire process, I want us to look at every concept in three different perspectives. Micro being self, meso being your family and friends, and then with the macro level, society. And being a social work student at heart, I want us to always look at everything through the strengths perspective. The strengths perspective is an approach to social work that puts the strengths and resources of people, communities, and their environments rather than problems or pathologically at the center of the helping process. And what this is saying to people who are not so familiar with this, when we're looking at society, when we're looking at our sanity, when we're looking at psychology, it's easy for us, especially if we're emotionally involved, to hone into what is happening to us, our adversities. Even unconsciously, we take that same perspective and we look at society in the same lens, not knowing that all of these factors weigh into our sanity. So we're going to start with step one through this process. And before I start, this process goes more in depth. I actually created a 3-lesson course that is over 3 hours. But this is just overview. Step one, understanding your authentic self. And I would like to know from anyone, can a person have true sanity if they don't understand who they are? And I want us to really think about that question when you're dealing with your perception of reality. Can you be your authentic self? So I want us to look at this image, and I want us to look at the words and everything that is surrounding this gentleman. Who are you? When you wake up, and I always say, when you wake up in the morning, the first, let's say 5 to 10 minutes, or right before you go to sleep, that person that you are, that vulnerability, can you honestly be that person in society? Or do we have to put on masks? And if we have to wear masks because of the different settings or environments that we're in, exactly how does that look? What does that entail? So looking at some of these adjectives, when we're looking at the family system, how's the history of each family? When you're looking at yourself, do you come from a family system that is full of chaos, that's full of trauma? Did you grow up in a middle class working environment? Did you grow up very successful? All of these things play a very big part when it comes to protecting our sanity and exactly how we perceive the world. Even when it comes to socioeconomic status, um, that also is a very big, intricate part of this. If you come from a more impoverished background, when you look into society, is your perception that people expect you to fail? If you're middle class and you come from a working family, are you in a predicament where it's expected for you to go to the same college that your parents went to? Are you expected to take over the family business? Even when it comes to more wealthier people, if your parents are in the limelight, if they're celebrities, how does it feel? What are the impacts when it pertains to living in their shadow? All of these different things actually make us who we are. And that's what really goes into the point of authenticity. Can you be different? Are you comfortable being yourself? And I want to highlight at the very bottom, fusion and differentiation of self. Uh, Again, with me being a social worker at heart, Murray Bowen, he is an American psychiatrist um, who created a very interesting theory. Bowen's family systems theory is a theory of human behavior that views the family as an emotional unit and uses systems thinkings to describe the unit's complex interactions. It is the nature of a family that its members are intensely connected emotionally. And when you look at this diagram, the one thing about this experiment that Bowen did, no one person is on either side, A or B. Some people, it fluctuates. 1 minute, a person, depending on their situation, they could come from a background that is full of fusion, meaning chaos. Or you have some that are more emotionally intelligent and they're more of the differentiation of self. Using my own personal experience, I remember going to North Carolina, and it was just like every time I got around my family, I would go back to old habits. But it was like as long as I stayed away from my family, I was more successful. I was more career driven. But it was like every single time I was around them, it created more fusion because of the environment. So when you're going back to protecting your sanity, your family environment and the relationships that you have, the connections that you made with people and with the individuals that you consider your family, all of these weigh on your sanity. It may not be something that you keep at the forefront, but unconsciously, these are things that can weigh on us. And if we're not careful, it could actually make our livelihoods and our interactions with other people more complicated. So I want us to take just a little deeper look into fusion. And I want us to take about, let's say, 30 seconds. And I want you to look at the different columns, look at the differences between those who have severe cases of trauma versus those who learned how to establish solid boundaries. And with looking at the diagram, where do you see yourself most of the time? Again, this isn't something where you could say, oh, I'm right dead in the middle. It may be a situation where career-wise, you are more sociable. When it comes to your career, you do like making those connections. However, it could come from, compacted trauma, having issues when it comes to attachment. Again, these are all small factors that in totality can play a very big role when it comes to our sanity. Especially as human beings, we are social creatures. Your sanity is also congruent with how well and successful you are with making and creating meaningful and solid relationships with others. Eric Erickson is another psychologist. Um, Erickson maintained that personality develops in a predetermined order through 8 stages of psychological development from infant to adulthood. And it interests me looking at the 8 stages because even though trust and mistrust starts at infancy to birth to 18 months, how many of us as adults, just through the barriers of life and the experiences that we've made or that have happened to us, did those situations cause us to trust more or to mistrust? When we look at the interactions with other people, let's say in the meso perspective, when you're looking at interactions with your family, with your friends, it could be even close coworkers. Do you trust the people around you? Or are you more in a fusion atmosphere where you're not able to trust? And with the 8 stages, this is something else that I would like for everyone to take maybe 10, 20 seconds and just go through the 8 stages and see if you were to look at your life, if you were to take an assessment of your livelihood from as far as you can remember, which side do you see yourself more on? Is it more positive? Is it more negative? How has these things shifted your perspective when you're looking at reality? And how much of these things weigh on you mentally, emotionally, and sometimes spiritually, which can have dramatic effects when it comes to trying to protect or understand how to protect your sanity. So for the first activity, and I know there's only a couple of us, but I want us to go through what impacts your sanity. This would be also something later on that people would be able to do. It's just dividing a sheet of paper and writing what positively or negatively impacts your sanity. And I've listed some examples. Maybe you come from a strong support system, but maybe even in that household, it was poverty. So you always have a pro and a con. Some people may have come from wealthy families and they may have had family issues because the parents, so they were used to working all the time. Maybe they grew up in an environment where emotions weren't taught. It was more career driven. So looking at these factors, what are some factors of your own? And if it's easier to just unmute yourself and talk, I want, I like interaction.
Well, nobody's putting anything in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to go ahead and speak.
And if not, we can still go ahead. When it comes to doing these assessments, for some, it may be more challenging than others. And again, this is only recommendations. This is some of the things that I have had to do within my own personal journey. Being mentally diagnosed myself and wanting to change the family dynamic. Often I ran into situations where it became very conflicting when it came to my desires of where I wanted to be in life. But then when I would look at my family dynamic, when I would look at the general perspective of those around me, it didn't fit. And a lot of times we get in those situations, even at work, even dealing with friends, where their ideology may be completely 180 of what we really want or what we really desire. And a lot of times when we get into those situations, it causes us to become more relaxed when it comes to establishing solid boundaries and protecting ourselves psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually.
We did get a few chat messages. One says ACEs are a negative, education is a positive, and spirituality and or religion can be a positive too.
All right. Yes. And how does these factors impact how you are? So when we also look at these factors, we also have to look at how does it impact us? Is it situations or events where it was easy for us to kind of put it in the back burner or make it as if it didn't exist? Are these issues that need to be dealt with immediately because of the mental or emotional strain that is putting on you? So how do these factors impact how you are? What are your boundaries? Now, the traditional definition of boundaries is a line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line. And when we're looking at boundaries, still, I want everyone to look at it through a micro, meso, and macro perspective. So when it comes to the micro perspective, what boundaries do you set for yourself? When you're looking at yourself, when you're going through the situations that you're dealing with, What boundaries or limitations, what expectations do you set for yourself? And if you don't, what are some boundaries and expectations that you need to start setting for yourself? Maybe it's something as simple as every single day, I'm going to make sure that I take 30 minutes or maybe 10 minutes to do and read affirmations. Maybe I have an expectancy, or I'm going to set a boundary that I won't tolerate myself being stagnated. So when it comes to your boundaries, what do you set for yourself? And how committed are you to upholding that? Which leads to the second one. Do you hold yourself accountable? When you're looking at your life, when you're dealing with your career interactions with others, do you find yourself holding yourself accountable? Or do you make mistakes or excuses? Do you have more of a conquering, let's get it done, do it mentality? Or do you have more of a suppressive victimization mentality? What expectations have you set for yourself? When you're looking at your life, what are the expectations? What are the goals that you set for yourself? And how effective have you been at it? Going through these questions, you can lie to anyone. You can lie to me. You can lie to the people around you. But the one thing about these assessments, you can't lie to yourself. And like I said, for some people, these can be a lot more complicated than others. And what is your bottom line? No matter what is it that you will not tolerate, no matter what? When we shift over to the mezzo, what boundaries have you set with your family and friends? When you're looking at the people that you're connected to, are these people benefiting or are they hindering your growth and process? What do or don't you tolerate? If you know that you have friends that like to party and you're a college student, do you have an established bottom line that I'm not going to do, or I'm not going to go out or participate because this is my bottom line? Again, all of this has everything to do with execution. What are your expectations for your friends, for your family? Do the people around you have the same determination for your success? Do they want you to be as successful as you envision yourself being? Do you have family and friends that are jealous? You are the company that you keep. So when you're assessing your life, when you're going through establishing boundaries and expectations for your friends and family, exactly how committed are you to standing solid or strong on those views or morals? And if this is something that you're struggling with, what are some things that you can put in place in your life that can help you establish and sustain these boundaries? Are you striving for congruent goals? when we're transitioning or when we're in a transitional phase, no matter what it is in our life, whatever transcendence that we're coming out of, the people around us, are their aspirations, their goals, what they want to accomplish, are you on the same path with them? I remember starting in education, and a lot of the old friends that I had, we would joke and we would play around. And I remember that a lot of them would say things like, why would you do this? I don't see myself doing that. Well, this feels or sounds very minute. And when it came to establishing boundaries, a lot of times it could be very problematic. I won't even say problematic, it could be challenging. Because with establishing boundaries, that can also lead to having to distance yourself from others. Now, this goes back to being your authentic self. Can you love yourself enough to establish boundaries to protect yourself? And if you find that you're becoming more relaxed when it comes to these barriers or boundaries, what are the things that you can put in place in your life that will help you to sustain them? The friends and family that you do have that are committed, that are in your corner, are they helping you to maintain? And on the macro level, how valuable do you feel when you look at society? How do you think others perceive you? It's very easy to make the mistake. If we think so negative, and this is the reason why we advocate a lot for this strengths perspective. If you have negativity, if you're always thinking negative, it's easy to fall into a rabbit hole where you feel that others perceive you in the same manner, even if they're not. So if you find yourself in that predicament, what are you doing to make sure that you have a better understanding of where you fit in, what role you play in when it comes to society, and just how others perceive you? And successful and being unsuccessful. How successful are you when you analyze your career? Are there regrets that you have? Do you find yourself in a hamster wheel? Do you find yourself repeating the same systems and cycles? When it comes to success, it doesn't have to always be monetary. It's very subjective. But when you look at your life and you look at your version of success, how close are you? And if you're not close, again, what are things that you can put in place? Because living in regret, feeling unsuccessful, all of these things are negative factors that, if they're not corrected, can cause a person to lose their sanity. And this whole course is about finding ways to protect it. Max Weber, arguably the foremost social theorist of the 20th century. And looking at Weber, the concept that he did, modernity versus modernization, it was very interesting to me because in many ways, that's a lot of the things that we're dealing with now in 2023. When we're looking in a more macro level, women's rights, racism, mental health, all of these are factors that are changing and have changed over time. Women are becoming more independent. The family dynamic has shifted. When we're looking at government policies, they're always changing. Even when we look at it through more of a meso lens, we're in an atmosphere and an environment, well, a culture now, where we've seen more mass shootings, school shootings, than ever before. As a parent, that's an additional stress. If I take my child and send them to school, how worried am I now that my child is going to come home safe? These are very big worries that we now have because times have changed. When we look at it through the lens of racism and race, how many people are still operating in the ideology of old? How many people are still stuck in the traditional values that they were taught their whole life? Versus more of, let's say, the younger generations that are more acceptable and adaptable to change, that understands, yes, okay, that was the history, but they're more into creating different ways, meaning that they have different perspectives. When you are looking at this, where do you fall? Would you consider yourself more of a modern person, traditional? Or are you more of a modernization and it's easier for you to adapt to change? And like I stated before, all of these, we're going to just touch bases through the micro, meso, and macro. So when we're looking at the micro, what are the traditional values that you have as an individual? Are your values congruent and contingent on your parents? Or did you create these more independently or based off situational circumstances? When you're looking at the meso, do you hold to your family values? Do you understand and still adhere to those family systems? I think for me, one of the biggest disappointments was coming from poverty and moving to Hayes, Kansas, and running for city commissioner. And I remember that my family system, my family's belief was always more money and more power. And if you get to this certain level, it's going to be this and this. And it wasn't until I got to that peak of my career that I realized that my entire family system was nothing that I wanted. It was built off secrets, lies, deception. It was filled with narcissistic values. So even in understanding that, it came to a decision. Would I continue to adhere to those values, even though it was more problematic? Because it's something that I've lived with my whole life. I was trained and raised in it. Or do I have the strength and resilience to find a different way? And a lot of times we get stuck in those battles between who we used to be and who we want to become. When we look at the macro level, how acceptable are we to change? Are we just stuck in our ways? The one thing in life that is constant is change. And the more you resist change, the more challenging life becomes. Consequently, negative effects when it pertains to protecting your sanity. So when we're looking at who we are and analyzing this, exactly how adaptable are we to change? And if we're not adaptable, what are systems that we can put in place to help us adapt more, to understand the trauma, the past experiences, and how they impact our decision making, how it impacts the way that we view society. What is your bottom line? 30 seconds. And you don't have to put it in the chat, but this would be more of just a mental thinking, micro, meso, and macro. What is the bottom line that you set for yourself? What is the bottom line that you set for those that are connected to you? Maybe your bottom line is, I refuse to be disrespected. I refuse to be oppressed. I refuse to be disrespected. What is your bottom line? When it comes to society and a macro level, also, what is your bottom line? When it comes to your employment, employees, what will you allow yourself? How would you, at what level will you allow people to treat you? People will treat you based on how you treat and view yourself. So everything still focuses and comes back to you. And the easier and the better we are at accepting reality, the better we can be at protecting our sanity. And then the last part, enhancing or just execution. And we're all familiar with Nike, just do it. A lot of times we are stagnated and we're dealing with so many emotional and psychological issues is because we're stagnated or we procrastinate. But in theory, you have to execute or a theory just becomes a thought. So if you're struggling with executing, what is it going to take for you to change your perception? What is it going to take for you to change your trajectory? If you find yourself more stagnated, what are some things that you can put in place? I remember going to the gym, and every time I would get to a certain size or whatever, I would always stop. And it got to a point where I had to assess where my values lied. If I was always focused on how everyone else was getting bigger and other people's size, it always made me digress until I shifted my perception. I had to put a value on me lifting weights that was greater than any adversity that could possibly come. And change is complicated, but we are creatures of habit. The more we practice these, the more you get in, the more you understand who you are, the easier it's going to be for you to establish these solid boundaries and be unapologetic. The easier it's going to be for you to create strong systems, support systems of people that are going to hold you accountable. And when we look at this slide, making your mark, I put these all in a list in the center because it goes with all of them. In a macro level, micro level, how determined are you to continue to protect your sanity? What commitment have you made to yourself? And if you haven't made a commitment to yourself, what is going to be your commitment? And how likely are you going to be to sustain that commitment? We're in January, so every year people come up with their New Year's resolution. This year, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to work out, I'm going to be this. How many of them sustained? How many people face situations where their situation became more impactful to them than staying committed to their dream or goal? Accountability. When faced with adversity, when faced with being set back, are we blaming? Are we growing? Are we making excuses? Are we putting it on someone else? Are we just taking accountability? Are we accepting change? Can we accept transition to be better? Authenticity. Can we be, if you're not able to be yourself in society, what are ways that you can be more authentic? Maybe going to therapy, being able to talk and heal from compacted and past trauma, seeking professional help so that you can be comfortable with who you are. And then establishing boundaries. Are you going to establish solid boundaries? And with those that are around you and connected to you, do they respect you enough to adhere to those boundaries? And just a few takeaways: assess yourself, family, environment, and friends. Authenticity. One of the biggest points of this entire coaching is being your authentic self. The easier it is for you to understand yourself, the easier everything else will fall into place. Establishing solid boundaries. Don't fear change. Embrace it. Establishing boundaries could be the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. And then execute. Just do it. The positive and negative assessments. You can do that with yourself, with family or friends. It doesn't have to be positive or negative. If you're in the business community, it could be pros and cons. If you're dealing with family members, it could be looking at the trajectory or the value. Do they operate or have the same morals or values? Are they more positive or are they more negative? All of these you will be able to do just with this chart. But understand that putting it on paper is the easy part. It's the execution that is going to determine how successful or unsuccessful you are when going through these changes. And well, this is actually in closing. When we're able to do this, we create what I like to call the gym-like mentality. When I first started going to the gym, I took my son, and I remember telling him I wanted him to look around at everyone. And I told him, I said that one interesting thing about every single person in the gym was the fact that every person had their own set of demons that they were battling. They had their own issues, their own trauma. But the interesting thing about the gym environment, after you go consistently for a while, you start seeing the same people. After a while, you start building relationships, you start building the rapport. And then consciously, after a while, with the relationships that y'all have built, y'all end up tackling your issues together. So when we're looking at it through the meso and macro lens, are we leading with respect? Are we looking at it through a strengths-based perspective to not just help us, but to help those that are connected to us, and even those that we meet in passing in society? Are we viewing these people? Do we view ourselves as valuable? Or do we just look at the bare minimum? Are we victimized? Being able to understand these concepts and put this into work would greatly change your perspective. And it helps to be, it will actually transition to being better at decision making. Any questions?
Nothing in the chat so far. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak your question directly. Any questions, anyone?
I guess not.
We got to thank you.
You're welcome.
That was a very good presentation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It makes you ask some hard questions of yourself.
Yes.
Which is what it takes to be authentic.
Oh, yes. A lot of people think or they make the mistake by thinking, oh, it's just going to be that easy. And for some people it is. People who haven't experienced that much trauma, it may be easier for them to be able to get over situations. And everything is more of a catch-22 when you're dealing with, let's say, myself. In one perspective, it's, oh my God, you're resilient. Is, you've overcome. It's easy to forget that with great trauma, there's some residual effects that come with that, consequently.
Yes, there are.
So if we move more, just as society and individually, if we move more in a strength-based perspective, we would start looking in a more appreciated view. And we start looking at what people are doing versus what they didn't do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. I want to thank you very much for your time and your presentation and all the effort and life experience that it had to take to bring you to this point. We certainly wish you well on your future endeavors. If I get any questions, I will email them to you. And so we can answer them that way. And just give me a day or two and I'll have this posted to our YouTube page.
I definitely will.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chance.
Thank you as well.
Okay. Have a good night.
You do as well.
Bye.